Welcome to Dental All Stars. I'm Alex Nottingham, founder and CEO of All Star Dental Academy. And with me is Shelly VanEpps, the COO and lead coach at All Star Dental Academy. And our topic is the law of the rubber band. Welcome, Shelly.
Thank you, Alex. I'm excited to be here today. This is an
So,
exciting topic.
yes, we're doing these shorter interviews, fun interviews with you and me. And I say that I'm going to come up with a name for it. Is it the Shelly and Alex show, the Alex and Shelly show? I don't know. Or the whatever show, SH, whatever. Okay, so that's a whole other area. So let's talk about the law of the rubber band. This is around leadership. So before we start, we have three sections. We're going to talk a little bit about the content. We're going to talk about a coaching hack or tip, since you're a coach for All Star, lead coach, and then some call to actions and resources. So tell me about the law of the rubber band.
It's a really fun thing that I heard first off. I know it comes from a lot of different places, but John Maxwell is where I heard it. And the law of the rubber band says that true life begins at the end of our comfort zone and we arrive there by stretching. And so I like to point this, stretch it. That's right. I like to use it from an analogy of asking people when you have a rubber band, when is it actually working? And that's when it's stretched, right? You're utilizing it. If you're using a rubber band to hold some things together, you have to stretch it. Otherwise, it just falls right off of that particular, your hair or your product or whatever it is that you're trying to hold together. So the law of the rubber band is essentially saying it's not working unless it's stretching. In a practice, what I like to kind of bring that back to is team members. I hear all the time, I hate role play. It's so uncomfortable. I don't want to do it. I'm afraid of failing. I'm like, listen, when you're stretching, you're growing. That pain that you're experiencing is growth. And so one thing that I like to make sure to mention is that we're not going to stretch you so far that you snap. That's what happens to a rubber band when we take it and we just rip it apart. We're not going to do that to you as a coach, as a practice. We want to just nurture you, get you to grow a little bit at a time, small baby steps, and then you're going to see that result on the other side of it. If you stretch too fast, if you grow too fast, it's not going to last. And so we want to go in small increments just outside your comfort zone. And that's where we start to continue to see that growth.
I was talking to my dad today, the dentist, about lifting weights. And actually, kind of as you're talking about, I'm thinking about a tendon or a muscle, and well, I don't know if they like to be stretched, but when they are stretched, they are taxed. I think they do like our tendons that helps it grow. Too much, you injure yourself, and too little, they contract, and you lose flexibility. So anything on life, it is this rubber band effect, finding that medium, that middle place between you're overcoming your comfort zone, but not going too far. They say get outside of your comfort zone. This is the idea of the rubber band. But if you go too far outside, you traumatize yourself. I remember even today we were talking with Heather, the co-owner, about that's an opportunity. We were talking about going live on, which we're going to do later, and there's an opportunity to push yourself a little bit, and that's where you have to find in terms of growth. Okay, so that makes sense. The law of the rubber band, we don't want to push too far, of course, and we don't want to underutilize, because then we just kind of stay where we are. And everything we do, anything you want to improve on, there's got to be a little bit of discomfort and finding ways to embrace a discomfort.
Well, and when
So,
you stretch
yeah,
too far and then you go backwards, all of a sudden you start to get bored. Like, think of, in your analogy, if you were lifting, I don't know, 20-pound weights, and all of a sudden you go to a 5-pound weight and you're like, you could just use your two fingers and you're like, do. It's not doing anything
strong
anymore.
fingers.
Yeah, I know, right? It's not doing anything for you anymore. It's literally just an activity that is getting no benefit. You're not getting any benefit out of it. And so once you've stretched, to go backwards, it's just kind of like, what was I doing back there? It doesn't even feel right anymore. So I like to put that into perspective for team members, especially if they've stretched so far and then all of a sudden they take on a different responsibility that's backwards. Nobody likes to take steps backwards necessarily. So I just like
No,
to
it,
throw.
it, it makes total sense. And when we stop And there's so many ways this can be applied. I mean, we can do so many shows on this, but there's in training, anything you do, like learning phone skills and scheduling skills, what we teach, and coaching, as you stop doing it, you will contract, you will shorten, and you will lose that. Actually, in terms of the rubber band, its nature is to go back to homeostasis, and which is pretty small. And that's what's going to happen when we stop challenging ourselves. We will go backwards. And I think what's also important to do, and this might be in your action steps, we'll say in a moment, but one of the issues that we're laying out is what's my motivation? Like, why do the rubber band? Because sometimes it's like, this is uncomfortable. Why should I even do it? And I think part of that is there, we have to tap into what our motivation is because like even with Heather, when we talk about this, like going out there and speaking, it can be anybody who's a decent speaker will feel some emotions and some fear. And I think the question is, well, what's the outcome? What's the benefit from that that you grow personally? Give an example. Went to Disney World and I was a little afraid of going on Tron because I was traumatized by Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, oh, great ride, but you spin around and you go fast, and it's too many things at one time. But I went on it, and it was actually quite tame. I enjoyed it, and I felt really good about that. And so I stretched. So now I'm looking forward to doing that in others. So I think this is a great, there's so many ways that we can go about doing it. And also for those that are listening, I love bringing on Shelly and talking about this because she's coaching. We live this. When something comes up, rubber band, let's talk about that. I did a whole podcast about the firefighter and firelighter that you taught me. I think we should do an episode about that. We can talk about it live. I was just talking about you. But we remember to utilize those things. And the same thing in the office. As your coach, as you learn these things, apply them. Okay, so that's the idea of the law of the rubber band. Let's talk about our coaching tip for this podcast. Tell me.
Yeah, I like to use this. We'll go off of this law of the rubber band to some extent, but when it comes in your practice, stepping outside your comfort zone and talking to your team members in a one-on-one process. And it really goes a long way. I just was at an on-site a couple weeks ago, and there's some turmoil. Couldn't put our finger on it. Started doing one-on-ones, just sitting down and talking to the team one-on-one. How are you doing? What's going really well? What things are you challenged by? How can I support you? That one short meeting with each team member turned that practice around almost instantly. It was like the camaraderie came back, the excitement came back, the team was gelling again. I do have to say, it's not just the leader or the owner or the office manager who should be having those one-on-ones. I absolutely love it when you can carve out enough time to do this as a round robin, meaning each team member is meeting with each other. So if you have an admin team member, they are literally meeting with your hygienist, your assistant, every single team member. And you can go online, you can look up different, if you're a sports person, you can find these different round robin simulators and tell everybody your team number 1, 2, 3. It'll tell you what order to go in. You don't have to come up with a schedule. Plug it in there. We have 7 team members. Give me a round robin. Set a timer, 5 to 7 minutes for each session, and just let them talk to one another and how they can support each other. It is practice changing. I would say life changing. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it is practice changing. It is huge. So that's my hack.
And I think with the hack, speaking about law of the rubber band, it and we were talking about this about clients that it's I don't say communication, confrontation. There's so much fear. Even I'm afraid to do it sometimes, but we all face that. We're approval addiction, which is another thing we teach a lot, and wanting people to like us. But we have to be able to have those important, crucial conversations with our team. Those one-on-ones are able to get that feedback.
And if you have a structure to it, a lot of doctors that I've done this with, they're just going to sit and they're going to chit chat and talk to one another about where they're going to go for coffee or something. And I said, not if you give them a structure and a purpose and why they're doing this, and acknowledge that it may be somewhat uncomfortable. That's how it ties to the law of the rubber band. If you're going to ask another team member for help, that shows for some personalities, that makes them extremely vulnerable, makes them feel weaker, not worthy or not able or capable to do their job. But if they have the support of their team and they know, hey, she's got my back or he has my back, it just, I mean, the transformation that can happen with that one simple activity it's huge. Couldn't,
Tremendous.
couldn't talk about it enough.
So let's talk about what's new at All Star.
Yeah. So off of leadership, we have limited space at our leadership retreat coming up in July. The Fort Lauderdale Lagomar Beach Resort and Club. Fancy name, amazing place, amazing hospitality over there at the Lagomar. And we are so, so fortunate to be headed back that way. And it is going to be headed up by our president of coaching, Eric Vickery, myself, and you. The three amigos are going to be running the leadership retreat this year. And it's for doctors. Like I said, limited seating. I think we max out at 25 and we already are more than halfway there. So very limited seating. And we just hope to get some more doctors who really want to focus on themselves, how they can help grow their practice, work on their leadership, their vision, their mission in a retreat style application. It is not a lecture. It is a work on yourself 2 days. And so we're super excited about it. First time we've been able to do it as a 2-day retreat. We've done it as a 1-day. It just wasn't enough time to really be able to dive in and get really in the nitty gritty. And that's the goal this time. So super excited about it.
That's awesome. I remember talking to Eric about this and I'm like, well, why are we doing these leadership retreats? And he's like, well, our clients need it. And as we talked more about it, we see that there's a training, but it all comes back to leadership, communication, things that we're talking about, the one-on-ones. How do we give feedback? That's, I think, one of the most difficult situations. I talk about this in our webinar. If you've been seeing it, allstardentalacademy.com/webinar, I talk about the ADA states that staff-related issues are the biggest problem for dental practices and for dentists. They don't want to deal with the team. They don't mind the team if they're happy, but anything that's they have to express something that's not right, it's very passive aggressive, or they just suffer. But with leadership, we always have to start with ourselves. And Shelly, as our COO, makes sure that the CEO is in line and that I'm listening. And we were talking about this recently, giving me feedback for me and how I can be better, understanding my limitations. I know that I can stretch only so far and there's certain things I can do and what can I learn and what systems can we put in place to help that and so on. So I think it's important to have that and that humility and see what other leaders do, emotional intelligence and working on oneself. Not only am I looking forward to presenting, but I'm looking forward to participating and learning from everybody. And I think that's the idea. And I think I know, and I've done it before, of leadership. So it's an amazing program. Where can we learn more about the leadership program? Where do we go?
Go right to our website, click on events. It's All Star Dental Academy, .com.
Yeah, you can click, events, take you there. And if you go there, you just click the button, events, you're there. And you can find out about leadership.
All of our events, but that one in particular, that's our next one that's coming up. So I wanted to make sure to mention it. I'm so excited about it. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you, Shelly VanEpps. And what I like to do for you that are listening, so if you're in the podcast, of course, and you're driving, you can't do that. But in terms of comment, I like to comment. Tell us about your experiences of the law of the rubber band. If you're on YouTube or Facebook and you're listening to this, whatever, post on there and we can have a discussion about different ways that you're utilizing this insight. And of course, follow us, subscribe, share with your friends. And until next time, everyone, go out there and be an all-star.